Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Trevor Noah was talking about the Respect for Marriage Act that was passed in the House this week. He described it as Democrats trying to learn their lesson and protect those rights before Clarence Thomas gets to them. Trevor called the bill, which legalizes gay and interracial marriage, a great victory for 1995. Let's be honest, it's really strange to be diving back into this debate that we all thought was resolved in 2015. This is weird. They're like, we're doing it now. And we're like, what do you mean? What's next? Are we going to start arguing about that dress again? Is that what we're doing? Because it's over, guys. We decided a long time ago it's blue and black, all right? Anyone who thinks it's white and gold is a Nazi. I mean, I don't even know what the argument is against gay marriage. What's the argument? When it became legal in 2015, conservatives said, oh, America's going to fall apart when this happens. And yeah, it kind of did. But that's not because of gay marriage. Nate Bergatzi celebrating 20 years in comedy, and his agent and PR people got a little puff piece in Variety, as sometimes celebrities do, and this is one of those. You can see them from a mile away. I like Nate Bargatze a lot, but yeah, this is a puff piece on a pretty cul-de-sac 25 minutes south of Nashville. Nate Bargatze lives in a sprawling 2-story brick house that doesn't stand out. He'd owned the house for a couple years before the neighbors realized the man Jim Gaffigan told Esquire was one of the top up-and-coming comics, and Mark Maron told Rolling Stone was a comic who should be big, lived down the street. Nate says, I assume I'm like everybody in the audience, and I could be friends with everyone out there. We're all the same. We have relatives, families, lives. It's human-to-human interactions. The same problems start there. He never thought about being a comedian, but then in high school, he made a group of friends laugh at a party for 30 minutes. The next weekend, we were with a different group of kids from another school, and my friend said, you should tell that story. But that time he bombed, and he thought, I was doing so good before. How do I get them to laugh? The kids in my school filled in the blanks, so I realized the first thing to do to get people to laugh is to connect with them. He had a job at Applebee's. He was dating Laura Baines, the woman he would later marry, and told her he wanted to be promoted to waiter. She teases him about dreaming big. Eventually, he moves on to be a meter reader at the water company. Bergatze recently realized he's dyslexic and said, I work for the county, I had great benefits, I wasn't the best at school, so this was a solid job you could have for the rest of your life. As a high school senior, though, he was asked where he would be in 10 years, and he said, I'd play Zanies. And it was kind of a joke, but he eventually did play Zanies. Initially, waiting tables shaped his approach to making people laugh. Dealing with customers taught him a sense of urgency. Quote, because you're solving the needs of the people at the table. Everything gets put on you in terms of their experience. Doing comedy, I can put the weight of the world on me. In my stand-up, everything will go wrong in my world. That's fine. I can make it funny. He also talked about his time in New York City. It said, New York taught me the tightness. You never want to be too far from the laugh. The farther you get from the laugh, the bigger the laugh has to be. You learn to stay close to the laugh. In New York, it's just to be funny, make the jokes, and get the laugh. You have to win them over immediately, where in L.A., they're going to go with you more. L.A.'s your crazy aunt saying, follow your dreams, write your screenplay, start a podcast. In New York, it's like, why'd you do that? The laugh button spoke to Nikki Glaser. She said, I try to avoid politics on stage because I don't want to know which audience members aren't on my side when it comes to stuff. And by my side, I mean like humanity's side. And it makes me not like my audience, so I try not to get political. The material I was working on before the pandemic, and I'm not joking, was all the stuff about wanting to find a husband before the end of the world because we're going to have to go into bunkers and live with each other. And I don't want to have a kid because I'll have to homeschool that child because there won't be teachers during the apocalypse. Then it all happened. She talked about in her special at one point, she said, I'm going to give a sex talk to your daughter, and if I ever have a daughter, I'll drown her and wait for a son. But if I'm forced to have a daughter because of water wars and we don't have water to drown her in, I'll tell her. But that's a joke, and me playing a character of a T word, the one the British like to use. But there's something to it that I like, that there's a feminist undertone to what I'm saying, and I don't want to alienate men with my comedy. I don't want to be an angry feminist on stage, but I am an angry feminist, so it's okay if it slips out. If I can make it more funny than good, it's a little more palatable. All right, there's a new episode of the show I host on the Live One app. It is called The Weekly Comedy Thing. It is the forerunner of this show. On The Weekly Comedy Thing, I tell you quick tidbits about comedians. Sound familiar? And then I play their bits. So if you listen to this podcast every day and you're like, you know what would be great about this podcast? If there was less John. And, you know, some comedy bits in there as well. Like, say, I told you about Nate Bergatze. I would actually play a Nate Bergatze bit. That's how that works. Anyway, it's free. The app is called Live One. The show is called Weekly Comedy Thing. There's a new episode every Sunday. Officially, it comes out Monday, but I usually post it Sunday morning, and then I go to the bagel store and I listen in the car to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. And if I did, I clean them up kind of early morning before you all notice. But new episode of the Weekly Comedy Thing on the Live One app. Check that out. Let's see who's at Just for Laughs today. Got my little bookmark here. Today's totally July 24th. I did not tape this Thursday afternoon. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? 7 o'clock. Oh no. I can look at my phonetic cheat sheet again. Atsuko Okatsuka. She's going to kill me. She's playing at 7 o'clock tonight. All right, Just for the Culture at 7, and The Nasty Show at 7, 8:30, Randy Feldface, 10 o'clock, Reese Nicholson, 11:59, Midnight Surprise. I know I've been reading you the same things every day. Starting tomorrow, Monday, it opens up a little bit. I see Tommy Tiernan is there tomorrow. Tuesday, you got Rachel Feinstein, Rosebud Baker, Preacher Lawson. Then Wednesday's when I'll be there. Isn't that exciting? Are any of you going? If you're going, let me know. We can connect, man or lady. Hit me up. Facebook, Daily Comedy News Podcast Group, Instagram, at Daily Comedy News. You know where to find me. Rob McElhenney, you know him from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He bought a soccer team, and there's a new show on the FX that answers the question, what happens when an American with no soccer knowledge travels across the pond to get involved with an underdog football club? You're like, Johnny Mac, that's just Ted Lasso, except it's not. Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds actually bought a soccer team, Wrexham AFC. This FX docuseries is called Welcome to Wrexham. Here's the official description. In 2020, Rob and Ryan teamed up to purchase the 5th-tier Red Dragons in the hopes of turning a club into an underdog story the whole world could root for. The worry? Rob and Ryan have no experience in football or working with each other. From Hollywood to Wales, from the pitch to the locker room, to the front office to the pub. That is such press release-y writing. Welcome to Wrexham. We'll track Rob and Ryan's crash course in football club ownership. Blah, blah, blah. Welcome to Wrexham premieres on FX August 24th. Joel Kim Booster talked to Salon and said, part of how I approach stand-up is trying to project this idea of radical transparency. Part of the magic trick of stand-up for me is getting the audience to believe that they're seeing all of me, all sides of me, and they're getting a complete version of who I am. The magic trick is getting them to think that, but they're only seeing like 25% of who I am as a person. And part of that for me is not running from those moments where we're the most human, where we're the most vulnerable, which is oftentimes sex. That's probably a direct response to the way I was raised, but all that stuff was kept behind closed doors and it was locked away from me for so long. And now that I have the freedom and a platform, all I want to do is talk about it and explore it and really understand it from as many perspectives as I can. Hey, Hannah Gadsby, who are your comedy heroes? Asks The Hollywood Reporter. The Hollywood Reporter said, I get a bit of George Carlin out of some of your material. Interesting. Hannah said, I'm not American. I didn't grow up with a lot of pop culture invading my personal spaces, so George Carlin wasn't on my radar. He had a broad career from what I can gather. He ran the gamut of styles, so I think everybody can be a little bit George Carlin. Even George Carlin is a little bit George Carlin. I really love certain comedians because of the way they engage with their audiences. They're like personal friends, like Margaret Cho and Maria Bamford. They're both great comics, but it's also their attitude toward their audience, which I felt was really remarkable. They asked Hannah Gadsby if she wants to act, and she said, my decisions are really based on what I think is... My voice cracked there like I was Greg Brady. I'm leaving it in. Did you hear that? If not, hit that back up 15, 30 seconds probably now, and listen to my voice crack like it's time to change. Hannah Gadsby said, my decisions are really based on what I think is creatively interesting to me, and of course what's interesting to me might not coincide with what's available in casting, so acting may or may not be in my future. From Fox News, your home for comedy news, John Cleese was asked if comedians have the freedom to be funny in 2022. Cleese said, no. Luckily, he said some more words, otherwise that would have been a really weird story for me to put in the podcast. Cleese said, there's always been limitations on what comedians are allowed to say. Why you go to Molière and Louis XIV? I mean, Molière had to be a bit careful. And there will always be limitations. I mean, in England, until some ridiculous late date like 1965, all plays had to be submitted to what used to be part of the palace called the Lord Chamberlain, and he would read it. And there were hilarious letters that used to go back and say, you may only say the F word once, and this sort of, you can't say bugger, but you can say this sort of ridiculous negotiating letters. And the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival coming to Edmonton. They've released the lineup. Write it down if you're in Edmonton. Friday, August 12th. WT Friday. See, like F in Friday, you get it. WT Friday. Nick Swartzen, Bobby Lee, Pauly Shore, Becky Robinson. I'm not familiar with Becky, but that's a good lineup. Saturday, August 13th, Amy Schumer and Undisclosed Friends. Sunday, August 14th, Tom Segura, Trevor Wallace, Michael Blaustein, Ricky Velez, Maddie Smith. I would go to that Great Outdoors Festival. Reach out. Got to pay for the travel. I'm not a zillionaire. I know how much money you guys think I make hitting you up to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/dailycomedynews. Let's not go crazy. Plus, I spend the money on coffee anyway. And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.